So the floor is open. Feel free to unmute and raise a question. And while people are thinking, I will start out, which is that so at Spark, we've been talking with an organization in Canada that's really interested in looking at Islamophobia in healthcare. And one of the things that we ran into right away was intersectionality and how on earth you begin to differentiate between discrimination that is experienced across multiple aspects of identity without going straight into quantification and forcing demographic classification that is often inappropriate and uncomfortable and all kinds of issues. And so, we came to something, but it was relatively unsatisfying. And I'm curious how you think about the complexity of intersectionality in these contexts.
Do you want to jump on that, Han?
Sure. So I have found intersectionality, I don't want to say easier to address, but something that I think is just coming up in qualitative methods, or maybe the way I approach it in a way where I haven't seen it as an obstacle, because I think in a lot of ways I'm not categorizing individuals, right, into certain identity groups to then compare them or to certain characteristics, and instead thinking about their experiences like on the ground. Like I can think about the birth workers that I have been interviewing, where many of them have multiple marginalized identities that they are navigating while trying to do birth work successfully in the US. And so I haven't found it to be an obstacle as much as something that really opens up more theorizing and much more interesting analysis about how racialized inequity emerges within childbirth, but then also within this professional space for this group as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but I have never seen it in that quite that way. But I think it may be the nature of the types of questions I'm asking, and partially this more qualitative approach I've taken.
Yeah, my sense is that a lot of what you're doing is very much exploratory in terms of being able to define all the dimensions of this vast space. And of course, when you get community engaged research with a very specific questions, you're kind of stuck with it. And that's where it starts to get into some of the awkwardness of having to break down intersectionality. When I agree with you, I think that the best approach is to treat people as people and to look at individual circumstances rather than trying to sort of pin down a range of demographics and define them as an intersection of those.
So how did you deal? So what happened with I'm curious now with the Islamophobia study.
So
and
it hasn't come
partners. That's a really important point.
The study hasn't come together yet, but in building out the research plan, it became about really asking people to self-identify in whatever ways they felt comfortable with, and then dealing with the mess of that in the analysis phase. And we did sort of a mix of, part of the proposal is sort of in-depth qualitative work with people, and then part is a large national survey so that we could try to get, and with oversampling, so that we could try to get some sort of concrete numbers around Islamophobia in healthcare. But what we really wanted to do was actually be able to tell the broader story of people's experiences, to actually bring in the narrative detail. That by far that seemed much more important. But in order to be able to sort of move things politically, you also need a number.
For sure. For sure. That's such an important point.
Faith.